I was a 9-year-old kid in the 1960s, had a big afro, you know, and visiting some relatives of a friend of mine in Virginia. So I was in Virginia. There was the small black and white TV, and there were the first fuzzy images of Neil Armstrong taking his first steps on the moon. The moon, you know. The moon is up there, but how does it, you know, you go through this sort of existential, are they really up there? Because you can see the moon. It's not something hidden. You didn't need special apparatus to know that the moon is up there. It's there. And I remember thinking distinctly, oh, first moon landing. Be the beginning of a whole new era. And I'm sure I was not alone with those thoughts. But because I was certain, as was everyone else, that it was the beginning of an era, I didn't jump for joy or do somersaults. I just said, it's the beginning. So there we were anticipating the moon landing. Then you watch the moon landing, and then you reflect on the moon landing, and as time moved on, it never kept happening. It was just there, now receding in the past. And had I known that our first steps on the moon would essentially be our last steps on the moon, I would have done somersaults. I would have said, oh my gosh, this is a unique moment in the history of our species, never to happen again. Let me revel and celebrate and pop champagne corks. I would have felt differently had I known that that was the beginning of the end rather than the beginning of the beginning. And I think the big regret, when I reflect on that era and I look at how hopeful people were about our future in space, in retrospect, it's clear as day that there was a disconnect between why we were going into space and why people thought we were going into space. We were going into space because we were at war with the Soviet Union. War drives the flow of money like no other force of nature. And it cost a lot of money to go to the moon. So in that regard, it kind of helped that we were at war with the Soviet Union. It enabled Congress to write checks that they wouldn't otherwise have written. So what happens? We beat the Soviet Union to the moon. Checks stop getting written. All right. Mars gets farther away. Mars recedes, which was the natural next step. If exploration was just a natural thing that we did as Americans, we would have been on Mars by the early 1980s. And it became clear in retrospect that without the military driver, that was never going to happen. What I find remarkable about that time period is that we went to the moon, which was some of the most hopeful. What I like about that time period is that consider that in the 1960s, the civil rights movement was in full swing. So I and my family were basically disenfranchised in many ways that others never even had the occasion to think about because they just go on in life. Okay? We were at war in Southeast Asia. The 1960s is probably the most turbulent decade in American history since the Civil War of the 1860s. And so in that decade, we embark upon the greatest epic adventure the species has ever undertaken. And the juxtaposition of those two, in my mind and my heart, is a remarkable, it's a remarkable thing. The fact that in 1968, the first mission to leave low Earth orbit, that was Apollo 8. That's a forgotten mission. They didn't land on the moon, but they left Earth. No one had ever left Earth before. They left Earth and then turned the camera back towards Earth. And for the first time, there it was, Earth. No national boundaries drawn, no sense or awareness that there are warring nations down there, just this beautiful blue marble ball adrift in space. Why do we celebrate the Saturn V rocket, the mightiest rocket ever launched? The rocket that took humans to the moon. We celebrate it as much as we do because we haven't done anything better than it since. Had we done better things than it since, we would dust it off, put it in the corner of a museum and say, wasn't that cute? Look at how they got to the moon back then. Whatever is the metric of the advance of technology as a means of getting us into space, it hasn't happened since the Saturn V rocket, and that was 40 years ago. So that should be an embarrassment to us as a nation. And so, yeah, we should celebrate. No taken away from that achievement. But at some point you should take pause and say, how come I'm not celebrating something else that should have happened since then? I think that's where your emotions should be placed. Yeah, cut the cake and enjoy the champagne. But at the end of the day, ask yourself, what does this mean? What does this mean for America? What does it mean for exploration? That we're here on this speck we call Earth. The day you stop that enterprise, I fear for the future of the species, because it's that which distinguishes humans from all other animals. That we explore and understand what it is we're doing while we're at it, and expand our place in the cosmos. If that stops, I don't want to live in those times. Put me back at another time, or put me in the future when people relearn what exploration is all about. Or dare I say, allow me to look over the shoulder in other countries, because other countries are doing that now. We're going to stand on our shore and say, hey, take us with you. You're going to Mars. That's not America. Not the America I grew up in. Not the America any of us wants. That's some other kind of America.
Speaking of multitasking, defending the Earth from meteors and asteroids used to be science fiction, but it's become serious science after a meteorite the size of a bus exploded over Russia in February. Neil deGrasse Tyson is director of New York's Hayden Planetarium. He's with us. Later today, he will host a group of former astronauts and cosmonauts who've been advising the UN on how to defend the planet. Good morning.
Good morning. Hi.
Really? We need to work on defending the planet?
Well, we've always known we don't want to get hit. I think
because we've been hit.
Yeah, we've been hit, and just talk to the dinosaurs about what happens when you get hit with something big. Yeah, and the dinosaurs were taken out by an asteroid about the size of Mount Everest 65 million years ago, and we remember the dinosaurs because they had big teeth and they're ferocious. But few people think about the fact that 70% of all the world's species of life went extinct in that very same episode. So it was a devastating event on Earth, and that's the big one. Little ones can come, maybe we won't go extinct, but it could take out our grid. We might have to jumpstart civilization. And the problem is, while we know about these risks, what happens when we do find one headed our way? Who's in charge of deflecting it? What monies will you use to put together to fund such a mission?
How much warning would we get?
Well, so you want as much warning as possible, and there are asteroids who have collision courses with Earth where you would say, okay, I know their orbit very well. In 100 orbits from now, it will hit. Then you get enough time to possibly do something about it. There's another category of comet that comes in from the depths of space. We call them long-term comets. If you discover those, you only get like 3 months warning. So you need something ready to go.
How could you prevent it, and what would it cost?
Well, the cost, who knows? Certainly the most expensive space mission there ever was. So it's more than just going to the moon. You don't want to make a mistake. Yes. You don't want to go there and have it not work. And there's some people who say, well, let's blow the sucker out of the sky. You know those folks who want to blow stuff up.
Yeah.
The problem with blowing up an asteroid is, while we're really good at blowing things up, we're less good at knowing where the pieces will fall afterwards. And you don't want to take one asteroid, turn them into two, and have to evacuate two coastlines, for example. So right now, the odds-on favorite is the effort to deflect an asteroid out of harm's way. It still lives to hurt you on another day, but once you can start maneuvering where things are in the solar system, you're done. You've assured your survival for millions of years to come.
Can we talk about Gravity for a moment, the film?
I was just going to
You had to go there.
Yes, because womp, womp, Debbie Downer. We just go to see a great movie, Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm eating my popcorn. Then I read your review about all the things that go wrong, just picking it all apart.
All I did was
happen,
Yes.
all this.
No,
Why did you do that?
Yeah.
I had 12 tweets the day after I saw the show, and I thought they were fun and cute. I said Gravity should be renamed Angular Momentum, because half the scenes people were tumbling through space, or it really should be renamed Zero Gravity. Or I thought Sandra Bullock's hair should be standing on end a little more. It is zero G after all. I just said a few things, and then they were like on the news the next day. It was on like Saturday Night Live, and it was like, chill out, people. It was like, I'm just talking about a movie.
Were you just trying to be helpful?
Well, they were just making a movie.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right.
I didn't list the 100 things they got right. The beautiful moment where I don't want to spoiler alert, the tear comes off and it floats, and the fact that when you're in an airlock and there's no sound until the air comes back. No, that was cool, and I liked the movie. It's doing well at the box office, so.
By the way, we thought you were an astrophysicist, not a movie reviewer.
No, so,
right.
No, but it is fun to think about the science that's in movies. You know, costume designers
Or not, as you would say.
get awards for how accurate and precise their renderings of costumes are for a particular
Is your chair
period.
getting hot? So let's talk about your new exhibit.
Push the eject button.
Would you like to say something
Charlie's
about
on
your
fire
new
this morning.
Well, yeah, let's just say this, Neil. You're the first time I've ever heard Charlie Rose say, just shut up. I can honestly say I have never heard him say that to anyone. Just shut up. Would you like to talk about your exhibit? Or would you like to leave?
No, I'm out of it. No. So, no, I have a day job, which is as director of the Hayden
Why are
Planetarium.
you here?
Yeah. And just briefly, we have we have astronauts coming at the Hayden Planetarium for a press conference this morning to discuss how the international community of countries would assemble and figure out how to fund such a mission. And if I picked a number, I don't know, $100 billion, I've had to pick a number, 50 billion, something like that. Somebody's got to come up with that money.
That's doable.
It is, but somebody has to organize it.
Right.
Yeah, there's what's possible in principle, and there's what's possible in practice. And the in practice requires political agreement all around. Plus, we're opening a new space show.
We love you here.
The dark
We do.
universe.
It's always good to see you.
Yeah, all right.
I hope this was fun for you.
Well,
Neil deGrasse Tyson, we thank you.
all right, thank you. CERN, this is where they have the famous Large Hadron Collider. This is like they're at the limits. It is the highest energy ever attained on Earth. And by the way, we would have done 3 times this energy had Congress not cut the funding for the superconducting super collider that would have been built in Texas. That was cut back in the early 90s, right around just after peace broke out in Europe, by the way. Physicists are only really useful when we're at war, according to government funding patterns. So they're looking for the Higgs boson and anything else that shows up on the docket. The Higgs is a particle that gives mass to other particles. So it's kind of cool. Some people have called it the God particle, and including physicists. What are they doing over in China? Well, they're building the largest dam in the world, the Three Gorges Dam, and they have a burgeoning aerospace industry growing at 14% a year, 13% a year. Their economy is growing at 10% a year. By the way, what's your interest rate you're getting on your savings account in your bank? 0.003. Okay. Did you get that over here? These get. Well, if you go to this other bank, you get 0.005, you know? Yeah, so other countries, different things are happening. Do you know that in Russia, they want to actually send a mission to deflect Apophis? They actually are prepared to fund that. That picture that I drew and did my little dance, that's not funded. That's just ideas on a page. Russia actually wants to fund it. And they invited us to participate. And I said, well, sure. But then I thought about it. I was asked by the NewsHour, what are my top 10 news stories of the year? This was now end of 2009. What are my top 10? I said, I don't have 10 stories, I have 5. Okay, what are they? I said, one of them is Russia inviting us to join them to deflect Apophis. They said, why? I said, here's why. Why is Russia creating the spaceship that's going to deflect Apophis, which, if it hits, wipes out the west coast of the United States? Aren't we the ones who's supposed to fund that mission and then invite others to participate? Isn't this how it has always been before? So that was an important news story for me because that is the beginning of the end. That's where you think you're at the top and people start doing things on their own with or without you. And all of a sudden, you gradually fade to insignificance on the world stage. That was writing on the wall for me when we were not leading that mission. Let's keep going. How about Brazil? If I mention Brazil, what's the first thing you think of? Someone said, bikinis. The guys are saying, yeah, the tongue bikinis, yeah. Soccer, maybe? Okay. This is the American view of Brazil. I understand. It's completely understandable. However, it blinds you to the fact that they have a burgeoning aerospace industry. Do you know that most planes that you fly between regional cities is made and designed in Brazil? You're not thinking this because you're still distracted by bikinis. Brazil has the third largest aerospace industry in the world, employing 18,000 people. It's a $20 billion industry there, and they invented the first airplane that can fly on alcohol. Brazil. Now, we don't do that because we just drink our alcohol. See, that's how that happens. We don't even think to make a plane out of it. So notice the American bias that prevents us from recognizing the rest of the world rising up as we stand there flat-footed.
Blow the whole lot up. I mean, that's the next.
And there's an implicit assumption that you're making inadvertently, possibly, that intelligence is an inevitable consequence of the evolutionary record. And I'm skeptical of that, because if that were the case, what we call our intelligence would have happened multiple times in the fossil record, and it hasn't. Whereas other things have shown up plenty of times, like the sense of sight and locomotion. There's some rather inventive ways things can get around the world. My favorite is the snake, of course. No arms, no legs, yet it gets around just fine. I'm imagining an alien visiting Earth, stumbling on a snake, the only creature it sees, right? And then it goes back and tells its home people, you're not going to believe what I saw. There's a creature on that planet. No arms, no legs. It can still get around. It detects its prey with infrared rays and can eat things 5 times bigger than its head. And they'll think the guy was on drugs.
Yeah.
It's an ordinary snake sitting here on our Earth.
Yeah.
Just while I'm on the subject, big disappointment I have are Hollywood aliens. And I don't know who to blame for this, Hollywood or biologists that advise them. Hollywood aliens are way too anthropomorphic for me. Even E.T., he had a head, shoulders, arms. Okay, he had 3 fingers instead of 5. There's still fingers at the end of a hand. He had legs, he had feet. That's human. And look at the diversity of life on Earth to draw from if you want to think about the ways of being alive. I'm just so disappointed. And not even that I know that I can help them, but one of my favorite aliens ever was the Blob. Did you see that movie?
No, I don't see as many movies as you. It's
Blob is classic. It's just so that alien was a blob, right? That's what it was, and it would just kind of move along, and it would grab onto you and suck out your blood and keep moving, and it was non-anthropic in concept, and it came from space, and I just thought that was an attempt to try to create some kind of way of being alive.
That's a very laudable attempt. It is interesting to look around the animal kingdom and count up the number of times that some things have evolved. I mean, eyes several dozen times, ears quite a large number of times. Echolocation, that's finding your way around by sonar, only 4 times. So that's
a bat and who else?
A bat, whales, and 2 different groups of birds, cave-dwelling birds, and a few rudimentary examples in some shrews and sea lions, but really 4 different times. Intelligence and language of the humankind only once, as you pointed out.
So it can't be that important for survival.
Well,
if natural selection is at work, it should have shown up many more times.
You think so? But I mean, it's a genuinely interesting point that I think biologists haven't thought about enough, is to go around the animal kingdom counting up the number of separate arisings of something, because that does tell you something about what you might expect elsewhere in the universe. You'd expect eyes, you might expect echolocation, hypodermic syringes, stingers, about a couple of dozen. I'm talking about independent evolutions now. You look about spiders.
Our version of that would be called guns. Yeah.
Called what?
Our version of the hypodermic stinger would be called a gun.
Yes,
right?
okay.
You sting someone with.
So but I'm talking about something that penetrates the body and injects poison.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting question. And another relevant point is you look around the world at different island continents and say, how many times, how similar are they? You look at Australia, the Australian mammals, for example, and there are very, very powerful similarities between Australian mammals, which evolved entirely independently of mammals in South America, independently again of mammals in Asia and Africa. And so, again, that gives you a kind of a clue for how predictable evolution is. Other worlds are going to be very different. But we perhaps shouldn't write off the possibility that the Hollywood aliens are they might not be that unimaginative. I mean, my colleague Simon Conway Morris has even suggested that there is very likely that there will be, if not humans, at least bipedal, big-brained, language-toting, hand-toting, forward-looking eyes for stereoscopy, pretty much humans. He thinks it's highly likely. He's got a religious agenda, I'm sorry to say, for that. But like him, I appreciate the power of natural selection. I think that whatever...
By the way, I think if he were... if he were a creature other than a primate, he might be giving a different list of things.
I think that's right, yeah. I think that's probably right.
The horse doesn't have 2 eyes facing forward, but the horse damn near can see directly behind it. And so the horse would be valuing that fact.
Oh, I'm not denigrating horses at all. I mean, there are lots
I'm just saying that's your first sign that there's bias is you start listing the human features that you would want in your alien.
I don't want to say that I'm not picking on humans because they're superior, but because they're us. I mean, we have stereoscopic vision, we have 3-dimensional vision, horses don't. They have a different kind of vision, insects have a different kind of vision, bats have echo. I mean, it's not vision, but it's using sound to produce what I would guess inside the bat's brain is probably perceived rather the same way we perceive visually, because why wouldn't you use the tools of the brain, of the mammalian brain,
to create an
image, to create a model of the world? I've even speculated...
By the way, that they showed that in, forgive me, the movie Daredevil.
Do they have bats?
He's blind, and when it rains, he likes when it rains because the rain hits people and he hears the different sort of reflections of the sound, and he saw his girlfriend for the first time in the rain. There's the image of her.
Okay, but my speculation is that bats hear in
This is America. I got to talk about our movies here. Sorry.
My speculation is that bats hear in color. Because why wouldn't you use color? Color is just hue, perceived hue, is nothing more than a label that the brain uses.
Precisely. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Color, you attach it to some sequence of changed phenomena.
And so bats would most usefully use color as a sign. For example, the difference between a furry moth and a leathery locust might be perceived as red versus blue. And that would be a very useful way for natural selection to have tied the labels of hue onto something that would seem very strange to us, but
the actual America we now live in has things like the fear of numbers. This one freaks me out every time I walk into an elevator and it's 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. I did the experiment. 80% of all buildings along Broadway in New York City do not have a 13th floor. This is the United States of America, and we have people afraid of the number 13. In those buildings, what I want to do is carry a Sharpie, cross off the 14. Yeah. That's the 13th floor, you're not fooling anybody. You know what else we're afraid of? We're afraid of, negative numbers. What happens when you get to the lobby and the floor below that, there's B for basement. And then what's below that? SB for sub-basement. Now we need some more consonants. We then go below that, SSB. There's a perfectly good arithmetic way to accomplish this with all negative numbers. But that scares Americans. You know who it does not scare? Germans. Okay? This is a museum in Germany. It's not even a science museum. It's a history museum, and you're looking at floor -1. You can't notice it? There it is, a little bigger for you. What country do we still associate with having some of the finest engineers in the world? Germany, of course. Then there's a math problem going on, okay? Congressman uttering the following sentence. I've changed my views since the The fact that the congressman made a math error, or maybe the congressman knew what he was saying and was secretly not changing his views at all. I don't know what's scary. And this one, the newspaper headline, in New York City, half the schools in the district are below average. That's kind of what average is, isn't it? I thought about half above and half below would be the sorry state of the universe if this were true. We'd have to rethink the foundations of mathematics if this were false. This one's a little more subtle. I'm sorry if you can't read these in the back row. I'll read them out. Here's another newspaper headline. 80% of airplane crash survivors had studied the locations of the exit doors on takeoff. That sounds pretty good. I want to be a survivor if something bad happens. So I'm going to read where the exit doors are on takeoff. Because I just read this headline. Here's the problem with that headline. Here's the problem. Suppose 100% of the dead people had studied the locations of the exit doors on takeoff. You would never know because they're dead. Pointless information. You can't interpret this without the other half of the information that died with the dead people. It continues. Okay? Here's a book that I bought. How to Defend Yourself Against Alien Abduction. I read that book before I came here. Because I wanted to make sure I arrived. I did everything say. So somebody wrote this book. A publisher bought this book from the author. They distribute the book. It's for sale in bookstores. It is 21st century America. Next year, what do we call next year? 2012. 2012. I can't see, you don't have this problem, because like, I don't know how many of you are the astrophysicists at the cocktail party, but I'm the astrophysicist at the cocktail party. They all come up to me and say, is the world going to end next year? So I get that question. So I said, why do you think so? Oh, why the Earth and the Sun and the black hole in the center of the galaxy, they're going to align on December 21st. And the Mayan calendar and it's all there. So I could say, well, you can calculate that extra gravity. We have laws of physics that enable this. And you can show that it's insignificant. I could give that answer, but that answer never works. Because they can't do the calculation, number one. Number two, they can always say, maybe that little extra bit is a tipping point for whatever catastrophe would happen on Earth. So I need a more powerful way to respond. So I say, you know this alignment of the Earth, Sun, and the center of the galaxy on December 21st, 2012? The scientifically literate response to that is not wrong. No, it's how often does that happen? It happens every year, December 21st. We're still here. You don't need to calculate that one. How to Survive 2012, a book. People writing books, selling books on them. How about Bad Physics? The Holiday Inn of the United Kingdom, 6 months ago, had an advertising campaign because we've all come back from a long, hard day. You get into the hotel bed that's tightly tucked, and the sheets are cold. So they had this great idea that you could hire human bed warmers that pre-warmed your bed for you before you got in. In fact, you can leave them there while you're in the bed. This is their ad photo. Now, here's the problem. First of all, I note that he's looking at her and not him. That's interesting. Another interesting point, I think, is that the only way they can actually warm the bed is if the heat from their skin could reach the sheets. But they're completely insulated. Right on down to the mittens. When you insulate somebody, there is no heat transfer. That's basic physics 101. The only way they could have warmed his bed is if both of them were butt naked. That would have changed their... That would have boosted, the reservation.